Morning, everybody. Morning. So, interesting one. Article in the Express. The Express talking about Macron. Yes, the Rothschild banker candidate that currently has been given the reins of France. And Merkel, the long-standing George Soros-sponsored open source, open Europe immigrant and demographics manipulator, the current acting chancellor of Germany. By the way, you don't get to be a head of a major European nation unless you are a controlled entity who they have information on and you fulfill the remit that is expected of you. These two characters who are not interested in your sovereignty or freedom are going to have met, and there are pre-announcements, and there are a number of outriders who are already laying the land, one of which is Aviva's CEO. Aviva, a large UK insurance company, are laying the land for a joint announcement of both Germany and France. Now, one of the key reasons is to look empirical. It's very important that both these key European countries make what's called an agreed joint submission. Germany is, in fact, the powerhouse in terms of the economic aspects. France is actually in quite poor economic condition. Germany has had the bulk of the benefits of the euro. However, the French like to be seen as sitting as a strong candidate at the leader, so they're going to be wanting to be certainly politically significant. So the two of them represent the structure of the key decision structure, the making of decision axis in Europe. The poor southern Mediterranean nations are largely owned by the euro situation and the debt situation, aka Greece, Portugal, Spain and Italy, and largely will not resist that which is handed down to them, although I suspect they are quietly seething and resent the fact that they lack the political clout post the euro debt situation. Anyway, these CEOs and other outriders for the Rothschild regime are forewarning us of a joint submission from Merkel and Macron in terms of regulation of Bitcoin. So here's my take, having given you quite a wordy intro. Have a look at the Express article. It's tweeted out on my Twitter profile, both the Reset Sniper, the Crypto Sniper, and I think I pushed it also on the Market Sniper, all three, because it's significant in all areas. These guys always intended to do this. So the notion that crypto would be allowed to survive as a true freedom, escape the central banker, escape the national aspects of taxation, usury, parasitic reduction of your freedoms and living off of your labor is always a false one. In other words, it's my opinion that the crypto realm is actually a precursor. It's a pace car to eventually a one world currency structure system that has broken down the national geographies. If it wasn't, they would have killed it. If it wasn't part of the plan, it would be entirely dead now. In other words, literally you would have to be on the dark web, you'd have to do a whole bunch of seedy things just to get there, and it would be stamped on. It would still have huge, brutal police attention, anybody who opened accounts, it would be entirely stamped out. What they've done is this pretend stamp out where they don't like it, certain banks don't want you to invest in it, etc. But it's kind of to give you the notion that this is a liberty field. You're cattle and you're sheep. We all are. And they've opened this gate and said, freedom, the big open prairie. And you've charged into this new field because you recognize the fact that the existing fields are all spent. the system is over, it's spent, and you're being let out into this big open wild of prairie. But little did you know, there was an electric fence that was ready to come up out the ground. It looked all wide and open, but once all the freedom seekers, the smart ones that realize that it's broken, and they want you to create the stampede to run in there, so that you draw in all the others that are a little bit slower to realize that the system is broken. They want to create a stampede from the one field into the other field, because this field is even closer to the abattoir, where they need you to be, where they can control you foot on throat. But for now, it has to look like an escape. So you are seduced and you lead into this new field, and then slowly, once you're in it, you realize that the ledger has stored everything that you've ever done. It can be investigated. It was designed with that intent in the first place. And now you're in there. The government slowly, as a certain critical mass of size has been met, and they probably have an idea of how much money they want to have gone in there and how much proliferation of people. They're probably monitoring social Twitter feeds at what point that it's reached the critical mass. They then start closing the net. And you suddenly start realizing you're swimming along like this fish, that there's a net around you and it's being closed and lifted up, and you realize you're about to be caught into this net. And that's my take of what's coming. This action has always been intended. So I did a clip about the central bankers and said the central bankers are never for your freedom. The Aviva CEO in this Express article even says countries are never going to let you. They talk about sovereignty like this beautiful thing. What does that mean? It means a country's right to own you. That's what it truly means. And the lack of freedom for you to be a person of the globe, and freedom of choice and interests, and where you pay the tax and where you can go where you're treated best. What they actually are doing is sovereignty is the right for them to control your currency, that you work in, and taxation. He even says it, this outrider for this EU experiment, the CEO of this UK insurance company, he even says it in his statement. Read the link on that Twitter feed. I'll maybe try to get the article posted in the notes below to save you guys having to chase that down. But it's fascinating because this was always, in my opinion, the intention. So now suddenly you start to become aware that there's a net. If you've opened a crypto account from within France or Germany, that address is captured, those passports, all that information in opening the account to trade anything that's meaningful as an amount is all in the ether. All your ledger transactions are now in the ether, and they are captured. And the truth of the matter is, in time, you could face, if that which you don't declare, you are actually in breach potentially of your country's laws, in terms of you might have benefited from a capital appreciation, etc., and you should be paying a CGT and all of that. So you should be thinking about your tax residency right now and what your capital gains position may be, because there's potential for the door to be knocking soon with an IRS type receiver of revenue or HMRC type figure there, and your accountants will soon be obliged. Have you made any ill-gotten gains, filthy lucre, by being actively involved in the crypto market? So in the same way, if you do an accountant's declaration and you say, do you have any shares that have gone up, or have you sold a property for which you've attained a gain which isn't your primary residence, in the questionnaire that you might have to answer in future when you fill in a return with your accountant may be, have you invested in any cryptocurrencies, and if so, what gains did you attain? And if you say yes, and you have been involved, you may have to produce trade records that showed what level you were entering and then what level you were out. Further to that, as I've discussed in previous clips, rather than just the crypto being an entry gateway, and if all you've done is not yet exited it, just by getting in and out of certain coins does mean a capital gain event if you gained or lost money in that process. So they've even broken it down that if you've closed a Bitcoin trade and you've bought Ethereum and then closed that, there's been 2 taxable events within that. So right down to each individual coin is like an individual equity that you might have had and owned. So here comes the encapsulation net. So the key things you must be thinking about: where is my tax residency? What is their position on capital gains? Is there a better place for me to be? Where will I be treated best in terms of these aspects? My freedom in terms of the crypto realm, and my tax situation and tax position in terms of that. Of course, I would say always comply with the law, but make sure you're at a place where that law is most favorable for your personal benefits. You can rest assured that high tax nations like Germany and France will not be favorable to you, and that the EU generally will, whatever Germany and France decide, because they are deciding, they will say we are submitting proposals for consideration. They are going to decide, and that will be templated with very little variation across all EU nations. That will mean Cyprus, Malta, all these places, right the way through to probably even leaning onto the UK. The UK might not vary very much, despite being a fairly significant economic force just outside of the EU, because they are owned by the same bankers and they are facing the same aspect of what they'll call sovereignty, which means their ability to exercise control over your money and extract tax from you. Sovereignty, when you hear the word sovereignty, hear me now. That is a central banker term designed to represent their power over you, your money, and their ability to extract tax from you. I'll say that one more time. When you hear the word sovereignty, the translation from whether it comes from an Aviva CEO or a central banker is their ability to control your money, proliferate it, devalue it, etc., apply interest rates to it, and their ability to extract tax from you. Excuse me a sec. So, excuse me there while we had some rather exuberant party driving up this little cobble lane. Yeah, so that's pretty much the detail of my take on this. This was always intended, it's pre-planned. Remember 2018 and the 1988 Economist magazine image. If you look at my the crypto sniper icon, that is the Phoenix Eagle holding the 10 coin 2018. 1988, 30 years to 2018. They told you the New World Order money. The New World Order money. And you've got to ask what's going to happen this year, and you've got to ask how are you set up for them to enact their sovereignty power over you, having defined sovereignty as I've just done 3 times for your benefit. Make sure you're well positioned. This is Francis, the crypto sniper, the market sniper, and the great financial reset sniper, saying be careful, heed the warnings, and recognize that far more is pre-planned, and that this is just the rollout of an agenda that has been in place for longer than you care to realize. With that, I love you and leave you.